Motivation is what differentiates a dreamer from a doer. And to charge up your weekend with some Sunday morning motivation, we have with us Mr. Dharmendra Rai, renowned speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now go over to Mr. Dharmendra Rai.
Hi, my name is Dharmendra Rai. I'm Mumbai's first mind map trainer. Welcome to my video for Kestone Imagine. Some bad news first. You're going to forget 80% of this video within the next 24 hours. That's right. You're going to forget 80% of this video within the next 24 hours. Imagine how much time you wasted in your life. Imagine the trillions of dollars being lost in the world every day because plenty of people don't understand how their brains work. Now you can avoid this. It's very simple. I'm going to share the best known strategies to mankind that you can use to move short-term memory into long-term memory. You can pause this video. You can call up some of the best teachers you know, some of the best students you know, and some of the smartest people you know. I bet most of them don't know about these two secrets that I'm about to share. Secret number one is spaced study. So you've got to review a summary of this video or this entire video. You can make a mind map summary. If you don't know what a mind map is, you can make a summary in whatever way you want. And you've got to study it in spaced intervals. That's secret number one. And how do people review stuff? When you see students doing what they call a revision, which is actually a review and not a revision, you typically see them looking at books and flipping pages. That just shows the extent of brain illiteracy that exists on the planet. Because your brain does not work like a video computer or a camera. You can't just hold something in front of somebody's eyes and expect him to take all that data and feed it in his brain. It's just not how the brain was wired. So in addition to spaced study, the other critical thing you've got to do is self-testing. Keep the original stuff near you. Eke out the data from your memory. and then compare it to the original stuff and look at your shortfalls. So that's the secret to moving information from short-term to long-term memory. That's something that you know right now because you've decided to see this video which talks about brain literacy. Useful, wasn't it? Let's look at a few more useful things. One of the biggest scams going around today is of mindfulness training. Anybody who's unemployed calls himself a mindfulness trainer. And what do they talk about? They tell you to close your eyes. Some of them will tell you to put a resin in your mouth. And then will tell you, feel the resin. What do you think is the weight of the resin? Can you smell the resin? Can you imagine what's the texture of the resin? Through this, they're trying to get you to pay attention to the resin and not pay attention to anything else. And they call this mindfulness. Well, that's a lot of nonsense. Because when people have so many problems in their brain, they're thinking of how they're going to pay their EMIs. They're thinking of how they're going to find a new job. They're thinking about how they cope with a lower salary. They're just anxious about the future. Are they really going to stop thinking about all that and focus on that silly resin? They're not. It just doesn't work that way. It's literally like a man who's having a heart attack rushing into the emergency section of a hospital and screaming at a doctor, "I'm having a heart attack. Can you please help me?" And the doctor says, "Don't have a heart attack for some time." That's literally like what happens at a mindfulness class. Don't think about anything else. Just think about this resin. If it was so easy to do, then everybody would be super fit and super healthy. The pharmaceutical industry worth trillions of dollars would just collapse. So it doesn't work that way. But people get caught because they don't delve into brain literacy. So let me give you the brain literacy derived scientific research backed key to real, to industrial, to feel safe mindfulness, to be totally present and to be totally focused on what you're doing. What does brain literacy tell us? Well, how about probing the source of lack of mindfulness in the first place? Can you see what causes lack of mindfulness in the first place? Get rid of the causes and maybe we'll have a solution. According to brain literacy, there are two aspects of the brain which are very important here. One is the brain is an extremely limited organ. Working memory, or the memory that you're consciously playing around with in your brain at one time, is very, very limited. There's a gentleman called George Miller who proposed the theory of 7 plus or minus 2. He proposed that most people in the world can hold 7 bits of information in their head plus or minus 2. So some people can hold 5 bits of information in their head. The minute it gets more than 5, they start fumbling. Some can hold 7 and some can hold 9. This was research done in the 1950s. Today, I think that rule should be called the rule of 1. Because most people have destroyed their brains because they're not using their mobiles. Yes, that's right. They're not using their mobiles. Their mobiles are using them. They have become lapdogs of their mobiles. So the minute they have even 2 pieces of data, they find it very, very difficult to focus, to concentrate, to work efficiently. So what's the solution? The solution is a pen and a paper. You should always have a pen and a paper with you, 24/7. If you feel your short-term memory is being overwhelmed, just jot things down on a pen, on a paper with a pen. Many people will think you're getting old. They'll think you're suffering from Alzheimer's, but it's okay. Ultimately, they're going to report to you, or ultimately they're going to be poorer than you, and you will have time for your bragging rights. So, solution number 1 to getting towards scientific mindfulness is always keep a pen and paper with you and dump your thoughts whenever you can. The other factor that influences the brain is called the Zeigarnik effect. Many of people have trouble sleeping, they have trouble concentrating, they have trouble being in the present moment because they have things on their minds which are incomplete. The most obvious reaction could be, oh, so why don't they just complete all the work that they feel is incomplete? You can never do that. As long as you're alive, you will always have things in your mind. You'll always want to do plenty of things which cannot be done immediately and which will be incomplete. It sounds like an insurmountable problem. You can't be present in the moment because your brain is thinking about incomplete things. You can't complete everything, so there will always be incomplete things in your brain. What's the way out? The way out is you divide whatever you have in your mind into 3 buckets. And anything you have in your mind can be put into one of these buckets. The first thing is the delete bucket. You just delete that task that you think you want to do. You just have to realize that your mind is going to have plenty of desires, and many of these desires are going to be useless desires in that they cannot be done and you can still have a happy life even if you don't do them. So you just have to delete them because there are only 24 hours in the day and you have to focus on your priorities. So it's very easy for me to say this, but it's very, very difficult to do because of another tendency of the brain called loss aversion. Our brain just hates losses. Every loss, no matter how small it is taken as a big threat, is taken as a death threat, because when we were cavemen, losing something was a great danger to our existence. If we did not have food, if we had scarcity of food, if we lost food, we may not survive. If we had excess food, there was nothing we could do about it. We couldn't store it. There were no refrigerators. And the same thinking is there in the minds of people today, in spite of the fact that it makes no sense, because we are not cavemen anymore. But still, most people in the world, they have a disproportionate response to even a small loss, and they're not as excited about profits or pleasure as they should be. But once you realize that, that realization itself makes you take a more balanced view towards losses. So just realize that that's the best course of action. You cannot do everything in your lives. There are only 24 hours in a day, and delete things that don't make sense, which are playing in your mind. The second bucket is the delegate bucket. You can't do everything yourself. You have to delegate You may not get the same thrill of delegation that you get when you do that. But again, you gotta be real, you gotta be brutal, you gotta be ruthless, you gotta realize your own limitations and delegate how much ever you can. Now, delegation is not enough. You have to put this in your calendar. Google Calendar is an excellent calendar, but that's your choice. You gotta go into Google Calendar and decide when you're going to delegate. So if you have something like maybe getting a video made by somebody for you, and you want to tell that person, you want to delegate this work to a person at 11 a.m. tomorrow, you just go to Google Calendar, just put it down and delegate video making to X, Y, and Z at 11 a.m. tomorrow. That's it. What's happened is that data has moved from your brain to a trusted place, to a trusted storehouse with a mechanism to alert you. And you can set that alert. Do you want to be alerted 15 minutes before? Do you want to be alerted half an hour before? It's up to you. So not only do you know, not only does your brain know that this has been moved to a safe vault, but it also knows that it's going to give you a reminder when you need the reminder the most. So what's the use of that? The use of that is now your brain has absolutely no incentive to keep that piece of data in your head. Let's move on to the third one. The first one was delete, the second one was delegate, and the third one is defer. Defer is when you're sure you want to do the job yourself, but you can't do it right now. You decide to do it at a certain time. Let's say 6 o'clock tomorrow. So you go to Google Notes and say you want to maybe buy a book. You're going to buy a book yourself. You're going to buy it on Amazon, but you're going to do that tomorrow at 6 p.m. So you put in Google Calendar that you're going to buy this book on Amazon at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Probably at 5:45 tomorrow, you'll get an inbox from Google Calendar saying, hey, you're supposed to buy a book today at 6 p.m. That's it. The principle is the same. The information is in a secure vault called Google Calendar, and you will get a reminder at the time you need the reminder. So you have absolutely no incentive, and the brain knows that, to keep this data in your head. And hence your brain is now totally free to focus exactly on what you want to do. This is practical mindfulness, real mindfulness, brutal mindfulness, industrial strength mindfulness. It's better than all the millions of classes out there which tell you to control your breath and think about a happy landscape, which is utter rubbish. They make you feel very nice. You feel you're in heaven when you're inside the seminar, because that's the only thing that attracts you to the seminar. That's the only good thing about it. It makes you feel good for some time. Well, you might as well spend time with the dog or see some comedy video on YouTube that can make you feel good at a much lower cost. So in the limited time we have together, let me talk about one more aspect of the brain, one more aspect of brain literacy, and that is the survivorship bias. There are plenty of motivational trainers. Logically, the term should be fraudulent motivational trainers. There are plenty of books, plenty of con men trying to attract you to their books or to their seminars through anecdotal stuff, through story. Storytelling is great. because Steve Jobs took drugs and according to that it made him creative and made his company have better culture than Microsoft and become more creative than Microsoft. It doesn't mean that if you take drugs, suddenly you're going to become very creative or you're going to be the next Steve Jobs. It just doesn't work that way. You have to look at what works in a proper research-backed context. This has worked for him, but has it been done by thousands of people and has worked then? So I'm not saying that the motivation from these stories doesn't help. These individuals are all smart, hardworking, they have the flaws, but that's fine. You can focus only on the good aspects. And it's fun to read biographies of successful people. But we should be careful into taking the lessons that make sense and discarding the lessons that don't make sense. We should remember that these guys are survivors. Donald Trump has been bankrupt 6 times. Many people who become bankrupt even once never bounce back. He's bounced back 6 times. He's a survivor. And you're looking at a survivor because survivor stories are thrilling. For every one survivor, there must be a billion failures. So there is a bias. The spotlight is on survivors and it's called survivorship bias. So you've got to be very, very careful and you've got to understand that these guys achieved success, but many people try to do the same thing, and for every one person who succeeded, a billion people failed. So that's another concept of brain literacy called survivorship bias. So in the little time that you have realized the importance of brain literacy. You've realized that with these few things that we've discussed, you can enhance your life drastically. You can be happier, smarter, richer, have better relationships, have better health. One of the biggest ways to improve your life is brain literacy. Thank you for watching. This is Dharmendra Rai, Mumbai's first mind-map trainer. And also imagine what you could do if 10 minutes have been so great, how much you could accomplish by devoting your entire life to brain literacy. Thank you again.